television show in the Optical Metaverse, and I am here today with an incredibly special guest. Her name is Dr. Dorothy Hitchmoth. She's actually been a role model for me ever since I was an optometry student and got involved in the American Optometric Association as a student. So, Dr. Hitchmoth, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Yeah, well, thank you for that very kind introduction. And nothing makes me more excited and more happy than when someone says that I helped them. But the reality is, this morning I'm learning from Dr. Irina. She's going to help me navigate this session. I'm excited to be here, and I'm going to hopefully give you all something a little bit different to think about in terms of how we approach patient care and what we can offer them. So I do actually have a formal presentation, and I think we're ready to go ahead with that, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm actually going to share my screen here, so give me just a moment. So yeah, this is me, super excited to be on the metaverse, as they say, here in Omni City. A couple of very obvious disclosures. Yes, I am in practice. I have been in practice for 28 years, but I'm also the Vice President of Clinical Affairs at Percept Corp, which is a very exciting role because it totally matches my life's mission, my practice mission, and it's really a beautiful marriage. This is my background. I'm not going to read through it. You're happy to check me out on LinkedIn. If you would like to contact me, I've included some couple of email addresses there. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn all the time. Also hang out regularly on ODs on Facebook, so you can reach out to me anywhere there. But I will be hanging out here in the Omni City event most of the morning this morning, so please contact me. So, I talked for just a moment about, I want to say here, our mission. This is the mission, not just for me, but the company that I happen to be working for at the moment, even though I'm still nearly in full-time clinical practice. And it's to develop technology that helps people see and perceive better. And you say, well, that's what we do already. Well, it is, but we're at a crossroads with technology where we're going to be able to do that in entirely new ways. This is a very, very exciting time. And I can't wait, literally, to help my patients improve their quality of life through something that I'm going to term augmented perception. And I'll go into the science of that as we move through the presentation here. What I want the audience to think about and understand this morning is that there are deep intellectual property bases all over the place. I happen to know where a whole bunch of them are that are critical for the development of digital eyewear. Now, this is a very crowded space, so I encourage those of you who want to stay in this space and who want to go into the 21st century in a way that is meaningful for your clients, in a way that distinguishes your practice, in a way that helps people to pay attention to the technology and join me as I navigate all of these changes and learn, because we're all going to learn together. But indeed, we are on the cusp of change, and the way, and we will influence the way humans see and interact with the world, for sure. So I envision something for the 21st century that tells me that the eye care practice of the future will prescribe dynamic, smart, electronic eyewear. And this is beyond sort of what you've been seeing in the market, augmented reality headsets. It's even beyond, in my vision, what even Apple has put out, right, with their current mixed reality, augmented reality headset, which is very expensive. But how we heal ourselves, how we keep ourselves safe, how we entertain ourselves will all happen through our glasses. I mean, this is really exciting. And in my estimation, it has to be through an object or a wearable that makes sense, that feels good, that's not this giant thing sort of strapped to your head. And I challenge other innovators to think about that, right? So literally, eye care reimagined. Now, of course, I'm a doc. I know there are lots of doctors in the audience as well as consumers, but I'm excited that we actually will be able to measure so many biomarkers, so many health markers, even circadian. I mean, we already can measure these things with other wearables, but for your glasses to give you all this information seems just really incredible. And that's where we are right now. So think of all the things that you do in your life and how you perform in your health. Guess what? Your glasses are going to help you do all this better. One of the ways that that is going to happen stems from neuroscience, a whole body of neuroscience that tells us that we can literally harness what the brain sees. And I'm going to say that again. We can literally harness what the brain sees. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper. If you can look at the way your eyes move, right? And there's lots of tracking apps and devices and capabilities and sensors, but you need to use that technology in a way that's very, very meaningful and combined with other technology, in my opinion, to mitigate what you're seeing in the environment, to instantaneously optimize lighting, exposure, or conditions. You will be able to customize your perceptual experience based on what you're trying to achieve. And while you're seeing, while you're looking, while you're performing, your glasses are going to capture data that helps keep you healthier and safer, right? So that's what I mean by imagine your glasses, not just improving your vision, but even saving your life. Now, I'm being a little ambiguous about that, but I'm going to dive into that a little bit more because in the ether, in the world, there are patent portfolios that can measure eye movements, ocular refractive qualities, environmental noise, such as glare, where your body is, how your body is moving. And once you gather that data and you can instantaneously get those measures, for example, into your electronic eyewear, the eyewear can then help you perform by literally changing how you see in real time. So dynamic lens change is what I call that. It may be dynamic lens change, it may be dynamic frame change, right? Just measuring eye and pupil movement that controls your glasses is a phenomenal leap forward. Pupil behavior that actually can change shading and polarization instantaneously. We all can, know the example of driving from really bright sunlight down into a dark tunnel and literally not being able to see, which is a very dangerous visual situation. And that's just one small example of what I'm talking about. Imagine pupil movement that predicts medical emergencies or moving vehicle emergencies. Imagine being able to simultaneously measure pupil and eye movements that actually avert these maladies, right? Imagine. I mean, to me, this is like so exciting and so profound that you may actually be able to use your glasses to do all of these things. And I'm sort of repeating this over and over again. But same thing, combining your vision, your vestibular system, and your auditory input simultaneously, again, through your eyewear to get a better, more accurate perception of the world around you. Imagine what you can do. And I'm going to ask the audience to imagine what that means, because the use cases, once you get control of all these inputs, are in the thousands, right? I have my ideas, some of them confidential, but I want to hear from all of you. This is not a commercial for the company that I work for, but I do want you to think about the electronic glasses of the future, right? And what that means and how you can optimize everything that you do through your eyes, which really means also your brain, right? The eyes, the brain, the spinal cord, these are not separate entities. They are all connected. Now, for the rest of my presentation, which I'm going to be relatively brief about here because I definitely want to open some time for questions and interaction, I do want to go over just a couple basic definitions. I suspect that this audience already knows this, but I just want to clarify briefly. So, augmented reality. Everybody's talking about AR, VR, or mixed reality, but AR is a direct or indirect view of a physical real world environment whose elements are augmented or supplemented by computer generated sensory input. Augmented perception is the definition to make perception better, to improve visual, auditory, or cognitive inputs by removing distractions or noise from your surroundings. So enhancing literally your human capability, not giving you a heads up display, in other words. So I'm going to take a science timeout for a moment here and talk about migraine. Now, one of the reasons I'm excited to be here this morning is not just to talk and share with you some of the ideas I have about what the eyewear of the future looks like, but I want to share a little bit of clinical information that I think is very exciting and represents sentinel neuroscience research. So going to talk about migraine for a moment. And I know there are probably hundreds of people listening right now who suffer from migraine. How do I know that? Because it has a very high prevalence, not just here in the United States, but in the world, right? It is estimated to be 1.1 billion cases in 2019, really looking at the scientific epidemiological data here. That's an incredible number of people, right? You think, oh, migraine, is that an eye thing? What's that all about? What are you talking about? What can eye doctors do about that? Neurology takes care of that, or primary care takes care of that. Well, let me challenge that thought just a little bit, because these patients are in our practices. And for those of you who see patients who are in the audience, you know this. Lots and lots of people come and see us, like 200 million people just in the US every year. And guess who we see? I have headaches. I have head pain. We see these patients. We owe it to them to make sure that we understand the latest science and we can offer the latest science explanation, diagnosis, and therapeutics, right? So we know how bad migraine is, right? Clinically, some people who suffer from either chronic or repeat type timeline episodic migraines, and I'm one of these, can have a wide range of comorbidities. It really impedes quality of life. The stress associated even with the anticipation that you might get a migraine is unbearable for some people and can even lead to horrible sleep cycle, and in the worst possible cases, thoughts of suicide. Now, I have actually seen some products that are literally glasses that change the perception that a patient experiences through control of light that helps their migraines feel better. This is a quote from a patient that I think is absolutely incredible, to the point where I actually didn't believe it when I first saw this quote that comes from a colleague of mine who was testing a particular product. I felt like I could dance. I felt so good and haven't felt this way in years. What? Really? To hear a patient say that, right? That's not someone who's, got new microprism for the first time. Say this about a pair of glasses, right? Something that they put in front of their eyeballs is so unbelievable, right? So we know that migraine is a neurovascular disease, right? This is like anatomy of migraine 101 here. It is a neurovascular disease, right? So that means something happens with the neurological tissue, and it is often the neurological tissue in the eye. We call that the retina or retinal ganglion cells that then triggers this neurovascular response. So this is like my most basic way to explain what is the anatomy of a migraine. And I know we have a mixed audience here of both docs and non-docs, but it is a neurological problem that causes a vasospasm that then creates head pain, right? Very complicated. It's been well studied now. We know a lot more now than we did even 5 years ago. One thing that to me is unbelievable discovery, and this isn't super new, it's just that the eye world is becoming much more aware of this particular neuroscience. We know that light is neuromodulating. What does that mean? That means that when light comes through your pupil and it hits the retina, that there are retinal ganglion cells that we call non-visual retinal ganglion cells, right? So these are not the traditional retinal ganglion cells that we think about for those of us who study the eye and vision. These are retinal ganglion cells that tell your brain along a completely different pathway what it is seeing in terms of exposure to the world, right? So what the heck does that mean? I'm going to explain that. It means that light can actually trigger a whole host of reactions in the brain. We now know a lot more about exactly what bands of light in the prism of the spectrum create what types of neurological reactions, right? So we now know through a whole series of different neuroscience studies what bands of light actually create what types of reaction in the brain. This is amazing to me. Who knew, right? Those of you who are eye docs, and even those of you who are not eye docs or neurologists or ophthalmologists, you know about rods and cones, you know about photoreceptors, but imagine these non-image forming visual functions, right, being controlled simply by light, just by controlling how light hits your eyes. So a couple things that we know from the science now. When you control light, you impact the brain and the body. There are actually studies that show that the neuronal connections that go from the retina all the way through the spinal cord can change how you experience pain, can mitigate pain. We know that a very narrow band of green light can actually change the levels of serotonin in the brain, and can alter the endogenous, our own pain control system, our own opioid system, and innate pain relieving system found throughout the central and peripheral nervous system, even in the gut and the immune system. Like, we are part of Mother Earth. We have evolved through exposure to light. So imagine harnessing this and understanding that we can harness this. We now know through science that a very narrow band of green light is neuromodulating. We know that blue light is neuromodulating, right? This is all over the eye world right now. Blue light, oh, bad, changes the DNA in the retina, causes lots of problems. Yeah, we're waiting on some longitudinal, population studies, but there's so much that we know about blue light. Yes, it wakes us up. Yes, that's a great thing. It's a great evolutionary adaptation. But what happens when we're on the 24/7 blue light cycle, right? It disrupts the brain. It doesn't allow it to rest. And that's just a minimal way that I think of light. But, as I said, all light is neuromodulating. We now have science that we can control, or that tells us that we control the brain by selective exposure to these different components. Holy cow, right? So I'm going to focus on just green this morning because I love green. And there's some reasons I like extracting out all the other colors except narrowband green light. We're talking like around the 525 range here. That says that anxiety may be mitigated by selective exposure to narrowband green light, right? This is Harvard research. This is not an obscure thought. We know that disruption of the light signal to the brain that which like blue light, for example, can actually cause health problems, right? The World Health Organization is actually saying that light and sleep imbalance is the equivalent of the new smoking epidemic. Not good, right? You must not disrupt that circadian rhythm on a regular basis, or you will suffer a host of downstream medical conditions and problems. Disrupted circadian rhythms are a probable carcinogen. I'm not making this up. The WHO is sharing this thought. So we know that there's neurological and metabolic fallout from the way that we now live and work, right? And we all recognize these images. We all relate to these behaviors, right? Every single one of us guilty. So we talked about light. I'm going to give one really quick shout out because obviously I'm obsessed with narrowband green light. There's lots and lots of data and research that tells us or gives us in very, very specific and solid, statistically significant information that if you expose the human eye, brain, spinal cord to just this narrow band of green light, that these are all the conditions that have been studied and are in study that can be positively affected. Huge list, huge list. There's only one product on the market that actually truly selects out this very specific narrow band of green light. And I would actually encourage you to test my comment here. So yeah, controlling light can heal, improve performance, and enhance safety. Who knew, right? Here again is a summary of what these thalamic neurons do. What the thalamic neurons in the brain are most responsive to blue and least responsive to greens. What does that mean, right? So you're most agitated or aggravated to the blue light versus the green light, okay? Sentinel work by Dr. Rami Burstein at Harvard Medical School. Everybody should know about this. Everybody in the eye world should understand this study and his group of studies. I mean, there's studies at Stanford and Duke. This isn't, just one. It's not just Harvard that's taking a look at this. But this, in my opinion, as a clinician scientist, represents some sentinel work on what light can do and does to our brain, right? And so he studied narrowband green light in a whole host of ways in both animals and humans. And in animals, he was actually able to figure out where that pathway was from retina to brain that controls pain and controls how our head reacts to pain, right? And so his group discovered with a p-value 0.0001, like it doesn't get any better than that for all you scientists out there, that green light is the least aggravating to the brain. And I'm paraphrasing here just to make this more simplified for the entire audience here. But they found that patients' experience with color and migraine photophobia, they speculate, originates in the cone-driven retinal pathways. And they're fine-tuned in the brain and preserved in the cortex, and they could actually prove this by doing human ERG and human VEP, but this was also matched by the animal studies when they actually looked at the tissues of euthanized animals. So we know from U of Tucson that narrowband green light reduces headache days and duration. We know that if you expose someone to just narrow band green light, they are going to have potentially less head pain. So my point is there are lots of clinical trials looking at the light effect on humans, like hundreds of neuroscience trials, studies, and bench science. A lot of this work is being completed by a whole host and group of scientists and doctors, many of whom, and there are more than one society, but the Society for Brain Mapping and Therapeutics is one. And for the first time ever in history, a doctor of optometry is the current president, Dr. Deborah Zielinski. So I would encourage you to take a look at their society, look at the work that they're doing, talk to your colleagues in NORA and those folks who are actually interacting with what we call neurobehavioral patients on a regular basis. And that's what we do partially here in my practice as well. So, the glasses of the future, in my opinion, need to collect data, right? From your eyes, perhaps data that your patients input, and data from other collected um, resources. And I think that's how what the migraine treatment of the future will really be about. It will be about partially, right, proper diagnosis. What are your triggers? What's your experience? What does your headache diary say? How does changing the light and mitigating the light around you improve your quality of life? And where does that fit into your armamentarium of therapeutics? My prediction is it's going to fit and be a large part of the treatment. It won't be the only treatment, right? But imagine us as ophthalmologists and optometrists and opticians being able to offer something to help these patients on their journey. I mean, I think that's just amazing. It does require precise engineering, right? It is actually not super simple to block out all of the wavelengths of light, sans narrowband green, that I'm talking about here. So you want to really do your research when you're looking for the right products, right? We know that this narrowband exposure, if you will, can impact migraine, anxiety, and sleep disruption. You want to make sure that the product really actually does block out the other wavelengths. Otherwise, you're messing with the brain, right? Light is neuromodulating. So imprecision, in other words, does not work. I did a little Google search again yesterday because I knew it was going to be on the Optical Metaverse. There's so much stuff online that doesn't work, that looks green, says it's green, but if you hold up your lasers to the lenses, not happening, right? And so people could pay $15 or $20 or $200 or even $300, and the product actually is not designed to work according to the published science. So I implore you, look at the published science, test these glasses on the market, make sure they're the real deal. And I encourage head-to-heads all over the place, because the real stuff's going to work and the wrong stuff is not going to work according to the science and what we know right now. So sort of as in summary, before we get into our interaction, exchange and chats, my opinion is the business of eyewear is changing, right? The way that we use eyewear now is not going to be the same as the way we use it tomorrow. Some of it will be the same, but there are so many ways that our lifestyle, the way we perform, our health will be impacted by your glasses. And I would encourage those of you who are entrepreneurs and investors and people that can further help innovation along, to think about just the health and wellness market, right? 4.7 trillion, and it's projected to reach 12.9 trillion. This is a huge market. People want to feel better. They want to see better. If their doctors don't help them do this, they're going to find it on their own. So for those of you who are docs, get reading, get studying, look at the science, and imagine your glasses being part of your wellness plan. I mean, this is like so exciting for me because I'm a big health and wellness and prevention gal myself. So smart electronic glasses, they're the future. Thousands of applications. I really want to hear from all of you what you think about this. We will together improve human vision, perception, and performance. And this is a special group that I'm super excited to be part of. And I just want to thank all of you for paying attention this morning. And I am happy I'm going to get out of my screen share here and just take any questions. I see.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Hishmat, for your amazing presentation. That was absolutely, eye-opening. Even for me, somebody who tries to keep up with the latest research, there's so much in so many different spheres of eye care, that this is something that I was, kind of Googling along as you were talking.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible, and I love to talk, and I was chatting away, and I see we're coming to the end of the session here, so I will take a look at all the chat questions, and I will answer those. But feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so this was actually a question I had. Is there an easy way for the general public, like if they bought, these glasses in the past, is there an easy way for them to test their glasses?
Yeah, so if you take any LED light source, like laser pointers are kind of an easy, accessible thing. I mean, who the heck wants to buy laser or LEDs to test their glasses? But all you have to do is hold up red, blue, green, whatever the wavelength is. And if the light transmits through the lenses, they are not blocking that wavelength. It's super simple. So I will actually try to post a demonstration of what happens when you do that to two different types of lenses, because it is actually a complicated manufacturing process to create a polymer, if you will, that blocks out the wavelengths of light. It's not that simple. So thus all the knockoffs in the market, which is what I worry about, right? Because then people are being taken advantage of and the science isn't being followed.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's not that much regulation as to what can and cannot be said about eyewear right now, which is why if it's well marketed, this is where patients are going, and it's not necessarily the well marketed product is not necessarily the best product.
That's exactly right. So buyer beware. I always say that. And that's where I was listening to the last session, and the optician was talking about, that personalized touch, that one-to-one care. Ask your eye doc, ask your optician, ask a trusted source, and before you buy.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of eye care professionals, even if we, aren't aware of a new technology, we will look into it if a patient asks. Like I've looked into things just because a patient has asked me to.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we can do as docs that are in the audience here this morning is educate, right? I mean, migraine and headache and head pain, this is all part of our medical training. But I think we could all do better, and there's new science, right? So keep going. That's what I tell all the students, but also those in practice.
Absolutely. And we have some great questions here from Eric Matei. So, what percentage of the population struggles with this? And I think he's referring to migraines.
Yeah, I assume he is. Don't make me do math so early on a Sunday morning. But the prevalence in the U.S. is estimated to be about 30 million. So hopefully that answers the question. So it's an enormous portion of the population.
Yeah.
Just here in the U.S. Globally, it's enormous, and I think I put that statistic up there as like close to just under 1 billion. I mean, these are insane numbers.
And then another question from Eric: do you think it's profession holding back or consumer lack of demand? So, Eric, if you want to clarify this a little bit more for us.
I think I know what he's asking. So, and if I don't, I'm looking.
He actually just raised his hand. If you want, I can invite him on stage.
Yeah, let's do it.
Eric, come join us. All right.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Well, hey, hello, everyone, coast to coast, I guess globally. Eric Matei tuning in from New Orleans, Louisiana. Hope everyone's having a great weekend here. So the question here really, Dr. Hitchmoth, Dr. Yakobin, is around, particularly on the front of the smart glasses, and we see this in other facets of modern eye care where the tech is moving forward, the consumer demand is moving forward, the profession is kind of holding things back. But then flip side of the coin, there are other times where the profession is pushing things forward, but there's not yet that consumer demand. So I guess to kind of frame it right now from the standpoint of these smart glasses, Dr. Hitchman, Dr. Yakobin, do you all think that right now the consumer demand is there and we need to get more of the profession on board with it? Or do you think that the tech is there, the profession's there, but we need to spur consumer demand to these solutions?
Well, so that's a great question, right? And so here we are. This is a new time. We are in the first time in history when information is simultaneously available to doctors and consumers, right? So the answer is, well, we all need to get educated at the same time. Doctors need not be offended by patients coming in and saying, hey, did you hear about this new technology? Because it's impossible for one doc to do that. But to answer your question, the whole purpose for me being here this morning is to help my colleagues and consumers at the same time understand that light control and mitigation actually can change the brain and change your life, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of years. I encourage all of you who are in the industry to continue to beat that drum. There are trusted sources for obtaining that knowledge. And, so hopefully I answered the question, but I think it's both, right? It's,
Sure.
Yeah, come on, folks, let's go, right? I think appropriately so, clinicians are going to be a little bit more conservative. We have been trained to validate. We have been trained to, above all, do no harm. That's appropriate, right? And
Yeah.
so it took me a while before I started drinking the narrowband green light Kool-Aid. It was not instant. And I love tech and all that kind of stuff. But check it out. Read, look at it, talk to your colleagues, participate in learning sessions. Make sure you feel comfortable, make sure you validate and protect the public and give them good answers. So I hope I answered the question.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Dr. Hitchman, you keep doing great things here. And, you just said that that's what you're committed to these next few years. So look forward to seeing this. And I think I really do think you hit the nail on the head very much so that it is very much, raising that consumer awareness. And then also, and to your point, as doctors, as clinicians, and I know myself in going to doctors for different needs, I want to be darn well sure that doctors are validating these treatment options, these solutions they're providing. So great talk, y'all. I'm going to exit stage. Catch y'all soon.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. Let me see if there's any more questions. It doesn't look like there are, but if anybody in the audience wants to chat with Dr. Hishmoth later today, you can either, go ahead and message her and schedule a meeting, or meet her in the speaker's booth at one of the tables.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Irina, for inviting me. It's been great fun, and hopefully we'll continue to be a great exchange in both directions because I did all the talking this morning.
Absolutely, yes. Well, I did all the learning, so. And I think a lot of our audience members, did learn something, whether they're watching this now live or they'll be watching this as a replay. Like, this is really important information. And a lot of times, if you're a doctor and you're not looking for that specific facet of information, you may not find it. You may be focused on developments on age-related macular degeneration, for instance. And that's also a very valid thing to follow. But because we have so much developing at the same time, I think this is why having, different sources of information and putting yourself in these different meetings and scenarios and subscribing to these journals is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's exactly right. We cannot operate in silos. That's one of the reasons I like the brain mapping folks, because it's a constellation of neuroscience, neurology, ophthalmology, optometry, neurosurgery. It's so exciting when scientists come together to make sure if you're doing A, that you don't negatively affect B, and that, there is a true scientific breakthrough that's not gonna harm people, right? That's the ultimate conservative. I tend to be out front getting super excited the second I see what I consider to be solid science. So anything I said this morning, I have vetted. Say that. And I even have my Aura ring on this morning. So, it's eyewear and sensors of the future. So this is it right here. I now know that the night before my migraine, which I don't get that often, my heart rate actually drops down. So it's new data. What am I going to do with that? What does that mean? Wow, yeah, migraine is a neurovascular disease. And, when do I literally put my narrowband green glasses on? And these are mine. Awesome, and actually even feels better just looking at you here. So, who knows? The glasses of the future, as they say. So, anyhow.
Awesome. All right. Well, in that case, I'll give you the last word and then I'll go ahead and sign us off.
Yeah. So everyone stay well, see your eye doc, and your quality of life, your vision, and your health will improve. And thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you, everybody.